welcome back to another video. So today we are going to be working in my sketchbook once again, and I believe I said this in the last kind of like sketchbook doodling video, was that I wanted to kind of continue with the kind of marker doodles that I've been doing in my sketchbook, because last week we did Pomu. So I wanted to continue to draw the other two girls in Lazu Light. So by the way, these are VTubers. They're part of Niji Sanji En, but I wanted to draw the rest because I actually wanted to do all three spreads, but I ran out of time last week. So I decided to draw Elira and Finana. So that is who we are going to be drawing today. But I wanted to show you guys kind of like the process of me going through picking colors. So I'm starting off with Elira's colors, so I'm picking a lot of blues and purples and kind of just figuring out which ones I want to use. I like to usually include pink just to indicate some skin tone for the characters, and then I'm trying to find colors that either match or complement the colors nicely. So sometimes I'm taking in consideration the intensity of the colors, especially the line work. So for the line work, I am using the Magic Fly markers because they are dual-ended and they have a fine liner or a fine tip on one end and then a brush tip on the other. But then the other markers are a mix of the Crayola Super Tips and I believe the Tombow markers. They're all water-based markers, so if you have just water-based markers, you can probably just use them just fine. Just be careful of just layering up the colors too much without letting it dry, or otherwise it might like chew through the page. So yeah, and then the other colors I was trying to figure out is Finana. So I picked a kind of like a pink tone, a kind of like minty greenish kind of color, turquoise, and then I picked a darker kind of turquoise color for the line work. Yeah, so for Elira's, I did do the for Elira's and Finana's, I did the sketches prior. I usually do the sketches prior just because it's easier for myself, so I hope you guys don't mind. But then I'm going to be showing you guys the coloring process. So I like to color before I do the line work. Just because water-based markers, it's easier to not like smudge around the lines. So color first and then do the line work after, so you don't have to worry about smudging and everything, or bleeding or ruining your marker colors. So I did decide to limit myself to 3 colors each for both Elira and Finana. So last week when I did Pomu's little spread, I think, let me check actually, I think it was around 5 to 6 colors for her. Let's see, pink, red, yellow, a light green, turquoise, and then I had the dark gray for the line work. So yeah, I used 6 colors for her. But yeah, for these two, I'm going to be using only 3 colors. And I think it just makes everything look a little bit more clean, and I didn't have to worry about colors being a little bit too like samey, like matching, I guess, if that makes sense. Like I don't want too many colors competing with the same either brightness or just like the values and stuff. So usually it's not too much of a problem as long as my line work has enough contrast compared to the colors that I'm coloring with. So Elira's color scheme, like I mentioned, she has more of like blues, purples, a little bit pink. I know her eye is more of a, I believe it's a green color, like the exposed eye, but I am using the blue just to make sure that the color consistency of the color palette remains the same. And then I believe she has some overalls, which I just used the same pink because it's more on the warmer side rather than the cooler side, so it's easier for me to do that. And then any of the much more darker areas, I tried to do the objects with the color of the purple, like the line work color, because that is going to be the darkest color. Now Elira's colors that I chose, I thought I was gonna like it more than Finana's I wasn't like sold when I saw the markers all together, but I thought like, you know what, maybe I can make it work. But I think in the end I actually really like Finana's spread a little bit more than Elira's, just because I don't know if it's the way I shaded everything or the two greens kind of match really nicely and the accent of the pink just looks nice. Maybe it was just like a different color palette that I really like, or maybe it reminds me of Masaki, I'm not too sure. This one's more closer to like my carrot spreads. So whenever I draw 17, I tend to pick like a blue and a pink doodle, like colors to doodle with. If I have no like pre-planned color palette or I'm not following a reference or anything, I just want to doodle simple, and usually I match it with any kind of dark line work. But because this paper is thin, I don't really want ghosting, so I am using a water-based marker as well for the line work. I'm trying my best to not go over areas like too much, otherwise like we might get pilling up the page a little bit or a little bit more ghosting on the other side, which I don't really want. So I try my best to keep them a little bit lighter in that sense. So when I sketch these out, I believe I sketched them like a day or two before doing the actual coloring, so there's some lines that I didn't recognize, and I believe even for like Elira's, like the one I'm working on right now, her sleeve on the right side of the page is not supposed to go that low. She has like a glove, but I guess I didn't remember at the time, so I just covered it up with like the entire sleeve going down. I also think the purple kind of helps bring out the page a lot, because the pink and the blue are so faded, like they're very pastel. But for Finana's, it's a little bit more like vibrancy, and I'm glad the line art color I chose isn't too intense. It kind of fits a little bit nicer in that sense. I don't know. You guys will see a little bit later. Maybe you'll see in the thumbnail. I just like the color combination for whatever reason. This one was just more in my comfort zone. Finana's colors wasn't too bad. I believe I've used like similar colors in the past, but maybe not this much amount of green. So yeah, once we get there, I'll talk about it more. So yeah, I did 4 Eliras, and then I did 5 different Finanas. Excuse me. Yeah, I did my best to kind of fill out the whole spread, because that's how I usually like to treat it if I'm doing kind of like a whole spread of one character kind of thing. I like filling up the whole thing with the one character. Otherwise, if I'm doing like separate characters, or it's like several days of me drawing on the sketchbook spread, I kind of like, it's like whatever mental state I'm in, or I want to keep them kind of separate if they're separate characters, if that makes sense. I just like consistency if it's the same character. I think it's kind of cute. And I think like also I think that's why I like color coordinating kind of like the pages if I ever add color like this, because I think it's a little fun when you look back being like, oh, I really like the consistency, or like how cohesive the color scheme looks together. So here's Elira. There's definitely a little bit more pink on the left side than the right side, but I think it looks kind of cute. I did my best to kind of mix the pink and the blue a little bit on the one on the left, so we could kind of, you know, play around with the white of the fabric, because I don't want it to be overwhelmingly warm or cool. So I tried to mix it a little bit, but I didn't do that for the rest, so it kind of is a little bit useless. Yeah, so moving on to Finana's spread. So like I said, Finana is gonna be primarily mostly like green, because the second color that I decided to pair up is green, and then the line work is also green. So one thing is like, even though I'm only really coloring with 2 markers, basically I'm taking in consideration like all 3 colors, because there's a lot of areas where I like to either build up, or if the character has like any darker elements, especially like black garments or anything like that, or like black hair, black eyes, black anything, it's easy for me to pick the darkest color and kind of fill it in, because value wise it might be more correct rather than just focusing like directly on the color, if that makes sense. So that's what I usually do for these spreads, kind of focus on the values if I want to pick and choose where I want to add the colors, because if I pick too many areas with green, some things might get a little too muddled, and I was trying to avoid that. So you can see that even for the Finana that I drew in the center, I tried my best that if there was too many areas that had strictly green large areas, I tried my best to kind of like fade it out as we get closer to the edges. And then you'll see when I do the line work, I'm gonna do the same thing, where closer to the top I'm gonna make quite dark, and then as we go down or farther away from whatever object I'm drawing from, it kind of like gets lighter. And I think that's why I like the spread so much. I think it's just fun to do spreads like this. It gives me like a lot of less pressure, I guess. Less pressure to sketch how I want, sketch really messy, because the line art really kind of like pulls these sketches together, and I kind of take my time doing the line work mostly rather than like the actual coloring. And you'll see in some areas, I think there's a little bit on Finana's and previously on Elira's, if you miss a part and you want to color it in, make sure the area is kind of like fully dried. So like I said, you don't over saturate the page with too much marker or liquid or anything, so that you might be destroying your paper. So I'm trying to also avoid that when I do the line work, because I didn't want to ruin the page on the back, which happens to be Elira, so I want to keep everything a little bit more lighter, if that makes sense. I did add little lines and like a little bit of shading on the hair for Finana's compared to Elira's. It was just like a choice. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I put more shading in Finana's compared to Elira. Elira has like much more lighter color scheme in terms of like her clothing, so it's a little bit easier for me to leave things a little bit blank without like heavily pushing the contrast. But for Finana's, she does have like a darker top for her bust, and then the part of her dress that kind of poops out, it's kind of like a darker blue, and it kind of gets lighter as towards the end, basically. But yeah, I had a lot of fun drawing both of them, and I think they would have been nice if I consecutively drew all three together, because I think that would have been cute. So another thing I wanted to talk about, actually, maybe I'll talk about it in a different video, but plans for Inktober. I don't know if I'm going to participate. If I do, I'm probably going to do something similar to these, probably. I was thinking maybe I could use my dip pen, but I don't know. I don't know if I can commit that much time towards doing 31 days of ink drawing with that. It might be a little bit frustrating, so I might just do them similar to this, where I can focus on the line work after I add color, after I've done like a preliminary sketch. And I'll probably sketch maybe the night before, and then do the line work the day of, kind of thing. I probably won't like plan out a whole thing. I'll just do like, I think this is what I did last year too. So what I did was that I wasn't able to commit super big pieces, or I didn't want to get burnt out from doing too many drawings for Inktober. So to keep it really simple, all I did was take a post-it size, or basically a post-it note, and I just took the pad and placed it in my sketchbook and drew a box, so that I would just sketch something in that box, and if I feel like I want to draw a little bit more, I'll break out of the box, but otherwise I keep within the box, and then I will ink it the same day. It just makes things a little bit less serious for me, as well as like I don't have to commit to such a large drawing and needing to finish it every day. I know like some people also do like one giant drawing and kind of like work on it little by little every day, which I also think is a good idea. I just like the idea of like drawing challenges just for consistency wise. So yeah, if I don't participate in like this year's Inktober, which you guys will probably see if I do participate, because in the next sketchbook tour, hopefully I'll be able to show you guys. And if I don't, maybe either watercolor or digital, maybe I'll participate in November instead. So that's in November, where there's like a set color palette thingy. Like there's like a color per day that you kind of have to make as like the main color of your illustration or drawing or whatever you're doing for that day. I think that'll be fun, because color is something I feel like I still really struggle with sometimes. But I want to play around with color a little bit more, which is kind of fun doing these spreads. I would like to do some of the other members of Nijisanji too, so I could kind of pick colors that I want to use and see if I can make it somewhat resemble or suit them. I remember like in the past when I first got into Noctix, or when Noctix debuted, I drew little doodles, I think, or I was like planning little color schemes for each of them, because I wanted to do like spreads for each of the characters. And I think I only did like a page for Uki and then I did a page for Alban, and then I stopped because I didn't really like how I did Alban's, because the colors I chose were not very representative of him. I believe I chose a yellow, an orange, and a gray or something like that, or I don't know what colors I had, but basically I made his hair more yellow, which value wise doesn't really fit, because I think like Alban's more like what, orange, brown, and gray maybe I could have got away with, and maybe would have been a better color scheme. I don't know why I went with yellow, because like I think in that video I even said like it kind of looks more like Toma rather than like Alban. So you know, this is kind of a better challenge for me to limit my color but try to get the character to look like the character that's supposed to be. And I think for like Pomu's compared to Elira's and Finana's, I don't know. I like all 3 of the spreads, but did I need 6 colors? Probably not. Maybe maximum 5, but I could definitely get away with just using the 4 colors for sure. Pomu's was a little bit difficult for me, I feel like, because I needed yellow and I needed kind of like a green color, but then I wasn't sure what to do for like the line work color. So when I was like struggling, I just threw in other colors. So I picked like a pink for the skin tone. I chose red for her eyes, which I didn't do for like Finana or Elira. I didn't choose a separate color for each of them. Luckily, Finana's like eye color is actually very similar to like a pinkish, I think it's hers is like a gradient, but Elira's is more like of a green color, so it's not blue. So yeah, I'm not going for like 100% accuracy, but yeah, these are still fun to do. So if you guys want to just, you know, pick colors for your OCs or characters you like to draw, I think it's a good way to pick color palettes maybe you like, and think about value a little bit more. You want to practice line work or anything like that, or just if you want to add color to any of your spreads in your sketchbook and stuff. I think it's a fun way to do this. But yeah, here is Elira's page right here, and then I'll show you guys Finana's, and then I think that's it pretty much. So just, I kept Elira is much more simple in terms of the sketching. I don't know why I went ham on doing Finana's, especially the one in the center and then the one in the top left. I think I added quite a bit. So hopefully you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you guys next time.